Hi everyone, welcome to my kitchen today. We're going to be making a raspberry and yogurt cake, a really delicious cake that you can have for morning or afternoon tea. Now first of all, you need to be organised. I have turned on my oven to 180 degrees already to preheat it, and I have collected out my ingredients and all of the equipment that I think I'm going to need. Next thing you need to do is to line your cake tin. I have a couple of options that I could use for this cake. It says on the recipe 18 centimetre cake tin, but I found this in my cupboard, so I might use this one today. You could use a ring tin if you wanted to, or even just a plain circle tin. Whatever you have in your cupboard, grab it out and give it a go. Now the first thing you need to do is get a piece of baking paper that is just a little bit bigger than the cake tin. And then I just like to use a Sharpie and just draw around the shape at the base. Then when you're cutting it out, just cut inside the line so that it's just a little bit smaller than what you drew. And it should fit nicely into your cake tin. Like that. Next, get the spray oil. Over the sink or a bin is better, so it doesn't make a mess everywhere. A little bit of spray. And just place the baking paper into the base. It's very difficult to do the spray for that cake tin, so I'm not going to worry about it, but just make sure that the edges are greased really well. For a circle cake tin with a ring part in the middle, same thing. Draw around the outside, cut it out. Then, to get the circle part, fold it in half, and then in half again. And then you can estimate where you need to cut. Give it a try. If it needs to be adjusted, just take it out and adjust the trimmings. And the same thing, a little bit of spray oil around the edges and pop that in and sit it down flat. It's not quite flat, but I would make sure that's flat. Okay. The next thing to do is to make sure that you wash your hands for 20 seconds, remove your jewellery, have your hair up, make sure you have a clean apron on as well. You also need a couple of clean tea towels and a clean dishcloth so that when you're cooking you have nice clean equipment to keep everything hygienic. For this recipe I'm going to make the topping crumble ingredients first. So you need 20 grams of flour. I'm going to weigh mine on my scales. So you're just going to cut off a bit of butter. Measure that out. Now the butter needs to be at room temperature for this recipe. So hopefully you remember to get that out a bit earlier. If not, you can soften it in the microwave. You also need 1.5 tablespoons of flour. So to get that, it's just 1 tablespoon and then 2 teaspoons for 1.5. So 1 tablespoon is 20 mils and a teaspoon is 5 mils. So 2 teaspoons is 10 mils. So 1.5 tablespoons. Same with the sugar, 1.5 tablespoons. So 1 tablespoon and then 2 teaspoons. You also need a quarter of a teaspoon of cinnamon. So the easiest way, pop that lid off. Check to see if your quarter of a teaspoon measurement fits in. Mine does. Then you might want to scrape it off and into there. Now you also need a quarter of a cup of flaked almonds, but I'm not going to pop them in yet. I'll do that after I've rubbed it in. Then just using your fingertips, toss it around and you're rubbing the butter through the sugar, flour and the cinnamon until it becomes like fine breadcrumbs. That'll take just a couple of minutes. My topping has been all rubbed through now, and I'm just going to add to that the flaked almonds. Now please remember, if you are allergic to nuts or almonds, do not add the almonds. You can just leave them out, or you might think of an alternative that you could put in there instead. I'm putting them in mine, but it's completely optional. I've set the topping ingredients to one side, and now I'm going to make the main part of the cake. First of all, you need 3/4 a cup of flour. So just like always, I am just getting the flour out, leveling it off. So 1/2 cup, and then 1/4 cup or 3/4 cup into the sifter. And you need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So baking powder is the chemical raising agent that's going to make this cake nice and aerated. Just tap the side to sift and set that aside. The next thing to do is to measure out your butter and your sugar. We're going to be using the creaming method. Now if you have a look on the butter, you'll see that there's little lines on there that say 50 grams, 100 grams, 150, 200, 250 grams. Now to get 100 grams, if you don't have scales, you can just line up the line and cut down. And I've put my bowl on, I've pressed tear so it's on 0. And that's 98 grams, so that's pretty close. So my butter is nice and soft. I left it out overnight so that it would be ready for this morning. So try and remember to do that when you're creaming butter and sugar. Leave it out the night before. I've measured out my 1/2 cup of caster sugar. I'm just going to pop that straight in. If your butter is still firm, you can dice it up and just soften it in the microwave. Do 10-second increments. Check it after every 10 seconds. Be careful not to melt it. I'm now going to cream the butter and sugar using electric beaters until it is light and fluffy. Stop partway through, scrape the sides down with a plastic spatula and then beat again. The idea is that you want the sugar to become dissolved and it should become a pale creamy colour. Okay, my butter and sugar is now creamed really nicely. I have cracked an egg into a bowl. Just going to whisk that up lightly, and we're going to gradually add the egg in a little bit at a time. Make sure you beat the egg in really well after you've added it. When it's all been mixed through, just use the spatula to scrape out the excess mixture that's stuck in the beaters. The next step is to add your flour and baking powder that we sifted earlier, and you also need 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt. So we're going to add half the flour and just half of the yogurt. Then just using a large metal spoon, you can just fold that through. Once that's combined, you add the extra flour and the rest of the Greek yogurt. Okay, so adding the flour and yogurt in again now. Plastic spatula, always useful for cooking, helps clean out your equipment really well, and it goes into your cake, not down the sink when you're washing up. Now when you're folding, a large metal spoon works well because it can cut through the mixture and it keeps the air in your cake. Okay, so just cut through and fold it back over on top of itself. Cut through, fold on top of itself. If it gets stuck in the spoon, just scrape it off. Now this is quite a thick batter, and that's okay. It will melt in the oven, so the butter will melt. Stir that until all your flour has dissolved into the mixture. Now we need to add the raspberries. I wasn't able to purchase frozen raspberries. For some reason, Coles is sold out at the moment. So I bought fresh raspberries, and this is a 125 gram punnet. I froze them last night. So I'm going to put in, we need 100 grams, so I'm going to put in nearly all of it. And then I'm going to keep a couple aside because I'll use them for decorating a little bit later. Frozen raspberries are good because they'll hold their shape when you fold them through. If they're defrosted, then they'll just collapse and mush up. Okay, so place your mixture into your cake tin. As I said, it is a really thick mixture, so it won't just flow in easily. Scrape it out. Scrape out your bowl. And then just press it down into your tin. Okay, once you've put it in your tin, you can then get your topping from earlier and sprinkle that over the top. Then this goes into the oven for, it depends on your oven, but about 20, maybe 25 minutes. Set your timer and clean up while that's cooking. I've just taken this out of the oven. It ended up being about 27, 28 minutes. So again, depends on the size of the tin you use, what kind of oven you have, etc. will depend on cooking time. So from about 23 minutes onwards, just check it and keep an eye on it. You can tell it's ready when you press on it and it springs back. All right, I'm going to leave it sit and cool down in my tin for 5 minutes before I turn it out. My cake is cool enough now to handle it. So I'm going to get a knife and run around the edge of the cake first to make sure that it's separated from the tin properly. Then I'm going to use a plate, pop it over the top and flip it across very carefully. And hopefully when you lift the lid that it's all okay. Peel the paper off. Now using a wire rack, flip it back the other way. You might lose a little bit of topping on the way. And just sit that aside to cool down just a little bit more before you put it back on a plate and get ready to serve it up. Okay, now to serve up, I'm going to very gently transfer it across to my plate. Okay, and there we have our raspberry and yogurt cake. To serve this, I'm going to get a little bit of icing sugar into a sifter and sprinkle it on top. Icing sugar on top of a cake always makes presentation look just that little bit better. Okay, I'm going to cut myself a slice. This love heart shaped cake is a bit hard to know what shape to cut. Transfer onto a plate. Beautiful and moist, this cake. Okay, and then I'm going to a little bit of Greek yogurt on the side, or you could serve it with cream and a raspberry or two. And there you have it. A really delicious afternoon tea, great with a tea or coffee. Have a great day, everyone. Happy cooking, and I'll see you next time. Bye.